Most people have the wrong idea about flow. They think it's a switch you can just flip. One moment you're distracted, disorganized, and struggling. The next, you're in the zone. You're effortlessly productive, time melts away, and every action flows perfectly into the next. This is the pop culture version of flow. It's the Hollywood montage where the struggling artist suddenly finds their muse and creates a masterpiece in a single blissful night. It's a beautiful idea, full of hope and simplicity. It sells books and gets clicks. But it's a myth. It's not how peak performance actually works in the real world. This misunderstanding is the single biggest reason people fail to find flow consistently. The fantasy of instant flow sets us up for failure. We chase a feeling, an effortless state of being, without understanding the price of admission. When that effortless state doesn't arrive on command, we get frustrated. We think something is wrong with us. Maybe we're not talented enough. Maybe we're not disciplined enough. We assume the magic isn't working for us today, so we give up. We check our email, scroll through social media, or find some other distraction to soothe the discomfort of not being in the zone. This cycle of hope and disappointment keeps us stuck on the surface, never accessing the profound depths of focus that flow provides. We've been sold a bill of goods. The idea that you can just sit down, take a deep breath, and slip into a state of ultimate focus is appealing but fundamentally flawed. It ignores the biological reality of how our brains achieve high performance. True, sustainable flow isn't a gift from the heavens. It's not a matter of luck or a fleeting moment of inspiration that you have to catch like a firefly in a jar. It's a process, a cycle. And like any cycle in nature, it has different phases. Some of those phases are pleasant and easy, but others are difficult and demanding. Understanding this is the first, most crucial step toward cultivating more flow in your life. So let's dismantle this myth right now. Forget the idea of an on-off switch for peak performance. Instead, I want you to start thinking about flow as a 4-stage cycle. The state of effortless action that we all crave is only one part of that cycle. To get there, you have to earn it. You have to move through the preceding stages, and the most important and misunderstood of these is the first one. It's not a state of ease or inspiration, it's the polar opposite. It's a phase defined by struggle, frustration, and a healthy dose of discomfort. This is the barrier to entry, and 95% of people turn back right when they hit it. The gateway to flow is not bliss. It is struggle. This is the fundamental truth that most guides to peak performance conveniently leave out. Before your brain can enter that seamless state of union, where you and the task become one, it must first grapple with the problem. It has to load the relevant information, identify the challenges, and recognize the gaps in its current understanding. This initial phase is messy. It feels like friction. It's the blank page staring back at you. It's the clunky first few attempts at a new ski run. It's the feeling of being overwhelmed and overloaded with information, not streamlined and focused. This struggle phase is a biological necessity. Think of it as the warm-up before the main event. Your brain is activating the neural networks it will need later on. It's pulling old data from memory and trying to connect it with new sensory input. This process is energy-intensive. It creates cognitive load, which we experience as stress, anxiety, or frustration. Our natural instinct is to flee this discomfort. We are hardwired to conserve energy and avoid cognitive strain. So when the struggle begins, our brain screams at us to stop, to do something easier, to seek a quick dopamine hit from a distraction. This is the critical moment of choice. Most people fail here. They misinterpret the struggle as a sign of failure. They think, this is too hard, or I'm not getting it, or I must not be in the right headspace for this today. And so they quit. They check their phone, answer an email, or get up to make a cup of coffee. They do anything to escape the friction. But in doing so, they abort the flow cycle before it has a chance to truly begin. They never push through the initial resistance long enough to reach the release and subsequent flow state that lies on the other side. They remain stuck in a perpetual cycle of starting and stopping, always wondering why they can't find their focus. Understanding this changes everything. The struggle isn't a sign that you're doing it wrong. The struggle is the sign that you're doing it right. It's the prerequisite. It's the non-negotiable first step. When you feel that frustration, that sense of being overwhelmed, you should see it as a signpost. It's a signal that your brain is engaged in the necessary work to build the framework for flow. Instead of running from that feeling, you have to learn to lean into it. You have to reframe the struggle not as a barrier, but as the very path you must walk to get where you want to go. So what's happening inside your head during this struggle phase? It's not just a feeling, it's a cascade of neurobiological events. Your brain is being flooded with stress hormones like norepinephrine and cortisol. These neurochemicals are not your enemy. They are focusing agents. They are designed to heighten your alertness and narrow your perceptual field, forcing you to pay closer attention to the problem at hand. They are essentially telling your brain, hey, this is important, pay attention. This initial stress response is what begins to prime the pump for the deep concentration that defines the flow state itself. Simultaneously, your brain is exhibiting high-frequency brainwaves, specifically beta waves. Beta is associated with active analytical thought. It's the brainwave state of conscious processing, decision-making, and problem-solving. This is your brain working hard, wrestling with the data. It's sifting through possibilities, making connections, and trying to build a coherent mental model of the task. This is why the struggle phase feels so effortful and mentally taxing. Because it is. Your conscious mind, particularly the prefrontal cortex, is working overtime. It's the heavy lifting that must happen before the effortless coasting can begin. The magic happens when you persist through this beta wave dominant struggle. If you don't give in to distraction, your brain eventually does something remarkable. It gives up on conscious processing. It realizes that the problem is too complex for the deliberate, slow-moving prefrontal cortex to solve alone. This is the moment of release. The brain shifts gears, down-regulating the activity in the prefrontal cortex in a process known as transient hypofrontality. This quieting of your inner critic and analytical mind is accompanied by a surge of feel-good, performance-enhancing neurochemicals like dopamine and anandamide. This transition from struggle to release is the pivot point of the entire cycle. As the prefrontal cortex goes quiet, your brain waves shift from the jagged, high-frequency beta to the smoother, more relaxed alpha waves, and eventually into the deep flow theta state. This is when the sense of effortless action kicks in. Your subconscious, which processes information millions of times faster than your conscious mind, takes over. Solutions begin to appear intuitively. Actions happen automatically. You have successfully navigated the neurochemical and neuroelectrical journey from struggle into flow. But it all started with embracing that initial uncomfortable high beta stress. Let's make this concrete with a common example. A writer facing a blank page. Our writer, let's call her Jane, sits down at her desk to work on a critical chapter of her book. She knows what she needs to write about, but the words just won't come. The blinking cursor on the screen seems to mock her. Every sentence she types feels clunky and wrong. She writes a paragraph, reads it back, and immediately deletes it in disgust. This is the struggle phase in its purest form. Her mind is buzzing with self-doubt and frustration. Her focus is fragmented. She feels a powerful urge to just get up and do the laundry or check Twitter. Jane's brain is in a state of high beta chaos. Her prefrontal cortex is working furiously, trying to logically construct the perfect opening. It's analyzing every word choice, judging every sentence structure, and screaming at her that nothing is good enough. The stress hormones are flowing. She feels agitated and stuck. This is the moment 95% of people give in. The discomfort is just too great. The allure of a simple, distracting task is too strong. The common advice would be to take a break, wait for inspiration to strike, or try again tomorrow. But this is precisely the wrong move if the goal is to enter flow. Now, imagine a different scenario. Jane understands the flow cycle. She recognizes this feeling of frustration not as a roadblock but as the entry point. She knows this is her brain loading the necessary data, so instead of running, she stays. She resists the urge to check her phone. She simply sits with the discomfort. She keeps her fingers on the keyboard and continues to type, even if what she produces is garbage. She allows herself to write badly. She's not trying to find the perfect sentence anymore, she's just trying to stay engaged with the process, to keep the channels open and the mental engine running. After about 15 or 20 minutes of this sustained, frustrating effort, something shifts. The inner critic that was screaming at her begins to quiet down. Her fingers start to move more fluidly across the keyboard. A new idea connects with an old one. A sentence emerges that feels right, which leads to another, and then another. The struggle hasn't vanished, but it has transformed into a focused intensity. Jane has pushed through the friction and entered the flow channel. Time begins to fall away. The world outside her screen disappears. She is no longer fighting the words, she is channeling them. She earned this state by refusing to quit during the struggle. The first practical step to engineering flow is to set the stage properly, and that means finding the sweet spot between the difficulty of a task and your current ability level. This is what we call the challenge skills balance. If a task is too easy, you'll become bored and your mind will wander. There's no friction, no struggle, and thus no trigger for the flow cycle to begin. If a task is too hard, you'll become anxious and overwhelmed, eventually giving up because the goal feels impossible. The struggle will be so intense that you can't endure it long enough to reach the release phase. Flow lives on the razor's edge between boredom and anxiety. This golden rule of flow suggests that the challenge should be just slightly beyond your current skill level. Researchers often peg this at about 4% harder than what you can comfortably do. This number isn't a magic formula, but a guiding principle. You need the task to be difficult enough to command your full attention, forcing you to stretch and grow, but not so difficult that it paralyzes you with fear or frustration. It's about finding that zone of optimal discomfort. This requires a bit of self-awareness. You have to be honest with yourself about what you're capable of, and then nudge the difficulty dial just a little bit higher. How do you apply this in practice? It's about breaking down your goals. If your goal is to write a book, the challenge is too massive and will induce anxiety. Instead, you break it down. Your goal for today might be to write 500 words or even outline one scene. This makes the challenge manageable. If you're a skier, you don't go from the bunny hill to a double black diamond. You find a blue run that pushes you just a little. You can manipulate the challenge by adding time constraints, increasing the complexity, or setting a higher standard for the outcome. The key is to be a scientist of your own performance, constantly tweaking the variables to stay in that 4% zone. This step is proactive. It's about designing your work and your life to be more flow-prone. Before you even begin a task, take a moment to assess it. Is this too easy for me? If so, how can I make it more challenging? Can I do it faster? Can I do it with a higher degree of quality? Or is this too hard for me right now? If so, how can I break it down into smaller, more manageable steps? By consciously setting the challenge level before you start, you are creating the ideal conditions for the struggle phase to be productive rather than debilitating. You are paving the road to flow before you even take the first step. Once you've set the right challenge level, the next step is to commit. You have to create an environment where abandoning the struggle is not an easy option. In our hyper-connected world, we are surrounded by escape hatches. Your phone, your email inbox, the tab with social media open in your browser, these are all designed to pull you away at the first sign of discomfort. To enter flow, you have to systematically close these hatches. You need to create a deep work block, a sacred space and time where the only thing to do is the task at hand. This is about manufacturing consequences for distraction. This doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as turning your phone off and putting it in another room. Not on silent, not face down on the desk, off and in another room. Close all unnecessary browser tabs. Use an app that blocks distracting websites for a set period. Tell your family or colleagues that you are unavailable for the next 90 minutes. The goal is to raise the activation energy required to quit. If you have to get up, walk to another room, turn on your phone, and wait for it to boot up just to check a notification, you're far less likely to do it than if it's sitting right there, buzzing on your desk. This no-exit strategy does more than just remove distractions. It sends a powerful signal to your brain. It says, there is no escape. The only way out is through. When your brain understands that its usual escape routes are blocked, it is forced to confront the problem in front of it. It has no choice but to stay engaged in the struggle. This artificially induced commitment helps you push through that initial period of friction and cognitive load. You are using your environment to support your willpower, making it easier to do the hard thing and harder to do the easy thing. Think of it like a swimmer who decides to swim to an island a mile offshore. Once they are halfway there, turning back is just as difficult as continuing forward. They have committed. They have no easy exit. Their focus naturally narrows on the goal, reaching the shore. You can create this same effect in your daily work. Define a 90-minute block for a specific task. Set a timer. Close all the doors, both literal and digital. For that period, you are a deep-sea diver. And the only way back to the surface is to complete your dive. This structure is the crucible that contains the struggle and forges it into flow. You've set the right challenge. You've blocked all the exits. Now comes the hardest and most crucial part. You have to learn to tolerate the struggle. This is an emotional and psychological skill. When the frustration mounts and your brain starts screaming for a distraction, you have to learn to breathe and stay put. You must accept that this discomfort is part of the process. It's not a signal that you're failing, it's the feeling of your brain gearing up for peak performance. This is a form of mindfulness, of being present with an unpleasant sensation without reacting to it. The key here is to lower the stakes. When you're in the struggle phase, don't aim for perfection, aim for persistence. If you're a writer, give yourself permission to write a terrible first draft. If you're a coder, allow yourself to write messy, inefficient code just to get a feature working. If you're learning a musical instrument, let yourself hit the wrong notes. The goal is not to produce a masterpiece during the struggle, the goal is simply to stay in the game. By continuing to engage with the task, you keep the flow cycle moving forward. The quality will come later, during the flow state itself. This practice of sitting with discomfort builds mental toughness. Each time you successfully resist the urge to flee, you strengthen the neural pathways for focus and discipline. You are, in a very real sense, training your brain to handle cognitive load more effectively. It's like lifting weights. The first time you try to lift a heavy weight, it feels impossibly hard, and your muscles burn. But if you persist, you get stronger. The next time, it's a little easier. The same is true for your attention. Enduring the struggle phase is a workout for your focus muscles. So I invite you to try this. The next time you sit down to do something important and you feel that familiar wall of frustration rise up, don't run. See it as the starting pistol. Acknowledge the discomfort, take a breath, and gently redirect your attention back to the task. Stay with it for just 5 more minutes, then 5 more after that. Be patient with yourself. This is not easy, and you won't succeed every time. But by reframing struggle as the path to flow, not an obstacle to it, you will have unlocked the single most important secret to achieving consistent, repeatable peak performance.